My husband and I went on our first date in December of 2019. And then on January 2020, he asked me to be his girlfriend. And then several months later, in September of 2020, he proposed, we got engaged. And then 3 months later, we got married on December 2020. And so from December 2019 to December 2020, we did a lot happened. And so, four things that made me know that my husband was the one is what I'm going to be sharing in this video today. The first thing was that my husband added value to my life. And I think that's a very important thing to like think about when it comes to your spouse. One of the other things too that I thought with respect to adding on to value was that he was a consistent person. One of my best friends always says that date someone, be with someone, marry someone who's consistent, who sticks to their word, who's honest. And that was something that he was very big on. For instance, just even being intentional about date night, that we make sure we have date nights and being with one another and spending time with one another. And think about it, when we started dating was 2020. This is when COVID happened. This is the whole big moment that COVID was going on. But so to be intentional about having date nights was that means you have to be creative, because we couldn't be going to restaurants and doing a lot of things that other people would do in a regular time. And so we had to get really creative by creating our own dates, such as going hiking or just having coffee dates or just playing games together. These are different things that we did to get creative. So he was very consistent. He was consistent in checking in on me, which is so important because I moved to an area whereby I don't have any family. And so during COVID and just me being here by myself, he was very intentional, very much present with me. And so that's very, very important. And also he challenged me as a Christian. He encouraged me to be in my word, to be in community. And so these are things that I believe are really, really important in terms of consistency, but also challenging me to be a better person. I know one of the things that we joke about was that when he would ask me, how are you? And I was just giving a response basically of like how my day was. But he's like, no, how are you? How are you feeling? And that was very important to me, because for many years, when someone asked me, how are you? All I do is just give a recap of my day. But he's like, no, how are you doing mentally? And that's so important. So those are all some of the practical ways that he was adding value to my life and teaching me how to be present with someone, how to be there with someone and not elsewhere, but also intentionally be there for people. I'd say the second thing that helped me know that he was the one was that we were able to have some hard conversations. So my husband's white, I'm black, of course, and we started dating in 2020. And in my lifetime, if there was a year in my adult life to not get into an interracial relationship, it was 2020. Because that's when with the whole murder of George Floyd was going on. And so we had to have a lot of hard conversations. It was a really intense time. There were a lot of racial tension going on. So 2020 probably was not the wisest time to get into an interracial relationship, but that's when we did. And so we had to learn to have really hard conversations. We had a rough start in the beginning, but we learned how to communicate with one another and be there for one another. And that even meant having to go in for a counseling session with our pastor, who ended up walking us through our premarital counseling and also officiating our wedding. And he's one of our good friends. But we had to take extra steps for us to get there. But the fact that we could have those hard conversations and still love one another and be there for one another, it meant a lot to me. It meant a lot to both of us, because we're just gonna keep having hard conversations just because of the racial climate of the country we live in, and just unfortunately that's one of the racial disparities that we have. And we also have a child now, and so we'll have to have hard race conversations with him as well. And so it meant so much to me that we could have that, we could kind of get through that really hard time, and we learn from one another, understanding our differences and also celebrating our differences as well. I think that's very, very important in a relationship and marriage. And then the third one would be that we were in similar seasons slash we also had similar visions for our future. And so with my husband and I, our first date, I was 29 and he's couple years older than I am. And so we were up there in age, and in the area we live in, that's old. You know, a lot of folks in the area we live in get married much earlier. So we're in a similar season, and we were never married before. We've never had any kids, and we both wanted that. That was something that we both wanted, to date someone who's never married, who's never had a kid. And that was just a personal preference. Not that there's anything wrong with, you know, someone being previously divorced or having a child, but for personal preference, we wanted to be with someone who's never been married and never had kids. And so it was good that we were able to come to that place of understanding and satisfaction that we both wanted that, and that's where we were both in life. And also, I remember for me being single, having those preferences, a lot of folks told me, Ruby, you're getting older. You can't have preferences like that at your age. And if you're going to marry probably a man who's older, he's likely going to be divorced, or he may have a child. So you cannot get picky. But for me, I knew what I wanted, and I held on to that. And even though I said I held on to that, there were a couple times I dated men who've been previously married and had a kid. I realized, I kind of came to more of a conclusion that I don't want that, because it was really difficult, you know, and it's just they're in a different season than I am. And so it kind of reassured me that yes, this is what I should stick to. And my husband now, when we were single, that's what we both wanted. So it was wonderful that we had that. And in terms of what we wanted for our future, we also knew that we wanted to have kids someday. He wanted to have kids, I wanted to have kids, and be intentional parents and be present parents. And so those are all conversations we had very early on in our relationship, because it mattered to us. And also just we were doing intentional dating, so we weren't just dating for fun. The purpose was to get married someday, and that's a similar season that I was in. It wasn't just, oh, let's hang out, let's just chill. No, it was like, let's get to know one another, let's grow together, and then that would lead us to the marriage aisle and spending a lifetime together. And so that was another those are the third reasons why I knew that my husband was the one. And the fourth one was just our faith. We're both Christians, and you know, we desire to be with a Christian. We were not going to compromise our faith. And so we knew that a Christian woman or a Christian man is the way to go, and that was non-negotiable. And so it was perfect, because we also had similar visions and similar values for our future. When it came to dating, our goal was to maintain purity until marriage, no intimacy whatsoever. And so we maintained that. It was really difficult because we're both attracted to one another, and it's just part of human nature. But we knew sex before marriage was not an option. And so that was another thing too. We held each other accountable. We set certain boundaries so we can be able to maintain that. And that meant a lot to me. So those are the 4 reasons that helped me know that my husband was the one.